Jeremy Richards, presentation. Jeremy, can you just identify, this is a private presentation?
I was about to do that. Okay. Thank you. Mayor, Chair and Councillors, my name is Jeremy Richards and I live in Northcote Point. I arrived here by bus this morning and had a good ride in, so I appreciate the public transport is working on some days. The Skypath business case requires the turnstile ticket barrier to be placed at each landing to meet the PPP funding arrangement, because with no formal landing gateways, there is no PP agreement, and therefore there is no Skypath as we know it. We are informed in the business case that Auckland Council has been closely associated with Skypath for many years, and yet the problematic landings, particularly in the north, remain. And what a disappointing outcome you're being asked to vote on today. Your vote to proceed will commit Auckland to the only major tolled and pedestrian and cycleway in the world. Now, that is not a good legacy for Auckland. And I think it's fair to say that even ardent cyclists and pedestrians, if they're brutally honest, would feel just a little bit let down by the outcome of all the years of their advocacy. While I support the recently proposed NZTA path, and it is recent, it nevertheless is proof that Skypath is being massively subsidised to prop up a flawed business case. Examine this business case wisely, because the commercial decision you're about to take will hold you accountable beyond the October elections. The future of cycling and walking infrastructure depends on you not listening to the hype or the clamour, but to solid risk analysis. Until NZTA issue conditions of occupation, permitted levels of patronage, and the certainty of the cost of bridge strengthening, you're not in a position to make a commercial decision, especially not on your first venture into the world of PPP. To experiment on public-private funding, it would be prudent to start on a smaller project. A PPP toilet facility might be a useful start. A PPP agreement for the extremely risky Skypath is the choice of last resort. If the PPP business case was compelling, private equity firms would be piling up cash outside the town hall this morning. But only one fund remains interested, and that puts you in a very weak position. Why continue to fund this project by PPP when the government is now talking favourably about council road charging? A toll on peak time harbour vehicles would pay off $100 million separated dual pathway inside 15 years. There's very low risk and no tickets, just happy cyclists and walkers and perhaps dogs too. Based on your own survey evidence, council should be lobbying Wellington hard about road pricing. When you fly to the Beehive, your Airbus cabin is 3.7 metres wide, it's 27 metres long, and it has 6 emergency exits. That's 2 at the front, 2 at the side, and 2 behind you. Skypath is similar in width, slightly larger by about a foot. But at the length of 36 Airbuses and just 2 exits, it's a very difficult environment in the case of an emergency. The Skypath design does not provide measured safeguards based on risk analysis. The case is based on a she'll be right mentality. This committee is reminded of its accountabilities to the 2015 New Zealand Health and Safety Act. Tourist visitors account for the most significant amount of Skypath revenue predictions, but I don't see any expert analysis of tourist trends and analysis of the risks to sustaining visitor tourist numbers. Projecting that during the lifetime of the financial agreement, millions of tourists will fund the PPP is nothing short of snake charming. And it begs the question, what is Skypath being built for? Or rather, who is Skypath being built for? A shortfall of the most crucial revenue component in the PPP agreement would become the ratepayer underwrite. Members of the committee, without requisite due diligence and transparent analysis of all the risks to this PPP project, you are effectively playing poker with ratepayer funds. I recommend that you abandon the Skypath PPP concept before it's too late and give Aucklanders the crossing that they deserve, which is a free access dual pathway that connects communities seamlessly, funded by road pricing and not a PPP disaster in the making. That concludes my presentation, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Jeremy, as well. Very considered. Councillor Wood.
Yeah, Jeremy, thanks for your presentation. Are you aware that Transit or our New Zealand Transport Agency have actually indicated that if this project did not proceed, they would consider putting a business case together for a cycleway across the bridge?
I am aware. There's been talk about extending the eastern lane and removing traffic from that lane to provide an on-deck pathway.
No, I'm talking about a cycleway, just a cycleway, not for tourists, but just for cyclists on the side of the bridge.
Well, we hear various things, but we're not. It's not clear exactly where NZTA stand, I don't think, on that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brewer.
You mentioned the Health and Safety at Work Act that came into being on the 4th of April. We as councillors have had a number of briefings on that, and the organisation, like every organisation and workplace in New Zealand, is on full alert. As far as your impression, given the construction of this, if something, God forbid, happened of significance, where do you believe the liability would fall?
Well, I'm not a legal expert on these points, but as a partner in the development, I would assume that council would be equally liable with the builder of the development.
And your impressions of the design at this point raise some serious concerns that in and around health and safety, the design might fall short.
Well, there are two aspects to the design. One is the mitigation of the dangers within the construction. As Kevin has already identified, you have cyclists travelling in both directions, you have pedestrians travelling in both directions, you have people on wheelchairs travelling amongst this, you have electric bikes. People may stick to the 15-kilometre-an-hour speed limit, but if you're riding down the eastern lane to the city, are you not going to be tempted to sort of just push it a little bit and see if you can ride a bit faster than the traffic? Somebody's coming out from one of the viewing platforms and bang. If you have a separated pathway, that's not going to happen. So there is the possibility to mitigate that risk by doing so now, not later. Now, I don't want to be alarmist, but we saw recently 2 trucks and trailers fall off across Cook Strait Ferry. It's possible that there could be some collision on the bridge. You might have some debris falling onto Skypath. You might have a chemical spillage. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to damage Skypath or it's going to catch fire, because it's going to be limited in that sense. But you might have fumes. And as we know, on an aircraft, there are lights to guide your path to 6 exits. But if you have 1,000, or I think as Bevan Woodward suggested, it would be capable of handling 2,000, or that remains to be seen whether or not NZTA approve that sort of loading. Would you like to be in that tunnel trying to get out if it's in that situation? Or would emergency exits be, accident responders be able to get to somebody in their hour of need? I don't think so. And That's the point. You have to construct something that you know is safe, and this to me is not safe.
Thank you,
Very
Jeremy.
concerning.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for your presentation. I think you made a number of very salient points there. The bridge was built in 1959. We paid for it with tolls quite some time ago. We've been waiting 57 years, and one would think in the cost of infrastructure, a pathway, cycleway is, relatively minor in the scheme of things. What do you say to the people, and a number of whom I suspect are ones who have submitted today, that this has been the only opportunity, it would seem, in all those years for something to actually happen? The prospect of going to an authority who seems to have no interest in actually doing anything, what would you say to those people in terms of, will this ever happen, or if we don't grasp this opportunity, then we might be waiting another 20 or 30 or whatever years?
I think that you need to go back to the 1953 austerity bridge, which was implemented due to uncertain economic times. And while we don't know what the future holds, there are uncertain times ahead. The government decided that it would not grant a loan to build a bridge with pathways, and it came up with the Auckland Harbour Bridge Authority at the time came up with a bridge that was reduced from the extra lanes for the pedestrian and cyclists to the four that were going to land at the end of Queen Street. So the motorway traffic was going to actually end up on Queen Street, and then at the last minute they said, we've got this wrong. We need to get it linked up to the motorway. Well, I'm not saying that Skypath is like a motorway, but I am saying that if you connected a pathway directly to Seapath, no tolls, just get it onto Seapath, you're eliminating all the angst and all the division and all the problems that have been surfacing at the Environment Court. So I'm saying that while Skypath looks like it's the magic bullet, it just isn't, because the business case doesn't stack up. And I'm saying that if the governing authorities had actually done their work and responded to people years ago, we wouldn't be in this position now. I think there are other options, and I think you need to explore those more before you commit today to voting to support a commercial risk. It's just a risk. And are you prepared to do that on behalf of your ratepayers? I don't know, but...
Thank you, Jeremy. Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. In terms of the safety issues, the points are taken. I think we need to be assured that this Skypath will be an attachment to the bridge and therefore will be owned in effect by the New Zealand Transport Agency, and they have their own, and the design specifications will have to meet NZTA's health and safety specifications. So I think we can be assured on that point.
Can I just respond to that?
Certainly.
I believe that the AJ Hackett bungee facility is occupying the bridge in the same way that Skypath would be attached. They would have a licence to occupy.
I'm talking about the physical attachment. It's a different matter.
Yeah.
I'm
just saying, I may have misheard you, but I think that all the risk of the activity of the bungee jump is held by AJ Hackett. It's not by NZTA.
I think you're getting off the point. We're talking about the design and the health and safety aspects of it. That will have to meet NZTA requirements.
Good.
Now, the other point you make about the financial risk, again, something that we need to take seriously. On the other hand, I would point out that the New Zealand Government and the Auckland Council via Auckland Transport is currently spending tens of millions of dollars on cycleways where people can actually physically cycle already.
Yes.
They cannot cycle or walk across the harbour bridge, and that would be the only harbour bridge I know of in the world where people can't do that.
Yes, and it would be the only one in the world where you have to pay for it while cars travel free.
Well, I mean, That's to be decided in the future. You used to have to pay to drive over the Harbour Bridge,
Yep.
and then they changed it. So governments and councils can change that,
They
subject
can.
to public opinion.
Except when you're locked into a PPP arrangement.
Thank you. I don't think there's anyone. Thank you, Jeremy, and it's a good presentation because you're actually someone who's not saying you're against crossing the bridge. You're just against the Sky Path, so
Correct.
it's a different. So we have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Penrose, Councillor Wood. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Right, we're